我们今天要讲什么故事啊
Auntie Claus。
对呀，是圣诞阿姨的故事也太可爱了吧！没有圣诞老公公，有圣诞阿姨 Auntie Claus， 所以她也会在圣诞节的时候发圣诞礼物吗？你看过这本书了吗？
还没有。
我也还没有。你看过吧？你跟爸比去年的时候读过啊，可是我没有看过。我们来看看这本 Auntie Claus， 听说是蛮不错的一本绘本，但我还没有机会看。Auntie Claus 很有圣诞气氛呢。The Kringle family live high atop the luxurious Bean Cherry Hotel in New York City, and they love Christmas. They kept a Christmas tree up all year round. Mr. Kringle was president of the renowned Jingle Bell Company. Mrs. Kringle owned the fabulous mistletoe to nail salon over on 56th and 5th. They had even named their young son after you-know-who. 所以这应该是一家蛮有钱的家庭，对不对？经济状况不错。Sophie and her little brother had everything, but if you ask, was it enough? No, they would say. Was it enough to have their own private soda fountain? No, they would shake their heads back and forth. Or clothes and books galore? No, 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 they would scream. It had been suggested by their great aunt, Auntie Claus, that maybe Sophie and her little brother were giving too many presents. You can never have too many presents, sniffed Sophie. Oh, that's my motto. 所以他们是两个贪心的姐弟，对不对？因为他们日常生活实在太富裕了，所以他们就不懂得珍惜啊。Yes, everyone in the Kringle family loved Christmas, but no one loved it more than Auntie Claus. Auntie Claus lived at the Bean as well, penthouse 25C. Every afternoon, Sophie was summoned there for tea. Each day, Auntie Claus would instruct Sophie on a different topic. One day, it might be Christmas tree. Always pick a nice full one, darling, with springy needles. Another day, decorating. You must strap the garland.Darling, one strand at a time. You must never throw it down. After they finished tea, Auntie Claus would close with these words of wisdom. And darling, always remember my first and final rule. Whether it's birthdays, Christmas, or Halloween, it is for better to give than it is to receive. 所以他的阿姨还说的话还蛮有哲理的。Sophie wondered about her great aunt a lot. She's so mysterious. Sophie thought, and this was true. There were many strange going on up in penthouse 25C. Most people consider Auntie Claus just another eccentric New Yorker, but Sophie knew that there was more to her than met the eye. For instance, what was the diamond key that always hung from a silver ribbon around her neck? Oh, just a bit of costume jewelry, darling, her great aunt would say, then quickly change the subject. Why did Auntie Claus leave every year right after Halloween and not return until Valentine's Day? Just a business trip, darling. And she'll change the subject again. Where does she go? Sophie wanted to know. Once again, it was Halloween, and Auntie Claus announced, In 1 week, I'm off on my annual business trip. What kind of business trip are you in anyway? Sophie had asked. Oh, that, darling, is something for me to know and you to find out, Auntie Claus had said with a twinkle in her eye. And that was exactly what Sophie intended to do. This year, I have a plan. I was stored away. Sophie had made up her mind. As she was leaving, Sophie said, I'm going on a business trip with Auntie Claus. Oh, marvelous, darling. Be home in time for Christmas. There's a good girl, said her mother. Oh, do take your mittens, said her father. I'm going too, said her little brother. Oh, no, you're not, said Sophie. Can if I want to, he said. Oh, cannot, she said. Can too, he cried. Cannot, she yelled. Wah! Sophie could hear his ears splitting, scream starts to fade as she ran out the door. 所以弟弟不能去，只有他可以去耶，还要去看看阿姨到底在做什么。Sophie tiptoed into Auntie Claus's apartment. There were many boxes and trunks waiting to go. Choosing the largest, Sophie pushed aside the capes and furs and wriggled inside. Quietly, she made a little peephole in the cardboard so she could see everything that was going on. Auntie Claus entered the room. She removed the diamond key that hung from the ribbon around her neck. Next, she placed the key into the lock of her old elevator. The door slid open. The boxes and trunks were loaded. The door slid shut. Wow! 所以他们要去什么神秘的地方啊？这好像是一个魔法电梯耶。Vroom! Vroom! The elevator shot up in the air and out into space. They were going up, 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 up! Minutes, an hour passed, and still they were going up. Sophie could feel it getting colder and colder. From her peephole, she could see stars zipping by. Or was that snow? We can't possibly be in New York any longer, she thought. 所以这台电梯到底会带他们去哪里呢？ The elevator landed with a thunk, tipping over Sophie's box. She could no longer see, but she thought she heard cheers. The sound soon faded until all became completely silent. Thinking it safe, she climbed out of the box. Where am I? Sophie whispered. 你觉得这是什么地方啊？雪这么大，是北极吗？还是冰宫？这么冷的感觉。Oh, you must be the new elf, a little man said. That's it, said Sophie. I'm the new elf. Who are you? Oh, I am Mr. Pudding, he said. Oh dear, you are in violation of elf rule number 3. What do you mean? Asked Sophie indignantly. He pulled a warm green and red book from his pocket. On the cover it read, Elf Rules and Vital Information. He pointed to the section marked Dress Code. Sophie read out loud. Always look neat, always look snappy. A well-dressed elf always feels happy. Follow me, he said, and trotted off into the darkness. Where are we going? Shouted Sophie. Hurry, Mr. Pudding called over his shoulder. Only 48 days left. Mr. Pudding put Sophie right to work in the mailroom. It seems to her as good a place as any to begin her search. Where was Auntie Claus, and what was she doing here? For days, Sophie lived among the elves and did her best to blend in. She slept on a cot in the elf dormitory. She ate her meals in the cafeteria. No one suspected. Every day, Mr. Pudding appeared. Hola, Elf Sophie. Settling in? He asked. The uniform is itchy. The hours are long," said Sophie. "This is hard work." "Oh dear, said Mr. Pudding. He pulled the old green and red book from his pocket. "Elf rule number 2, Mr. Pudding recited. An elf's work is never done, but hard work never hurt anyone. Rules, scrimmels," thought Sophie. For weeks, Sophie looked high and low for Auntie Claus. But now it was almost Christmas Eve and she had turned up nothing. Sophie was worried. If she didn't find Auntie Claus, how would she get home? If she didn't get home, how will I get all my Christmas presents? She thought. Just then Mr. Pudding appeared. "Hola, Elf Sophie," he said. "Good news! You have excelled in the mailroom and may proceed to packing wrapping. After that, we will all pitch in on sleigh packing." "I'm not going to package wrapping, and I'm not going to sleigh packing. I want to go home," Sophie yelled. "I have to get all my—" But before she could finish, Santa's voice interrupted over the PA system. "It's that time of year again," his voice boomed. "And I was hoping one of you would volunteer to go to the coal mines and pick up the BB&G list." Sophie whispered to Mr. Pudding, "Oh, what is the BB&G list?" "Oh, BB&G," he shivered, "is short for bad boys and girls. Any boys and girls on that list goes without presents or worse for Christmas." Sophie swallowed hard. "Uh-oh," she thought. Mr. Pudding continued. "Only the bravest elf would volunteer for such an awful job." "Yes, a brave elf," thought Sophie, "or else a girl who thinks she might be on that list." She raised her hand high. "I will go," she said. Oh dear, Mr. Pudding said. As Sophie made her way towards the coal mines, she could hear the chanting of the BB&G elves. "Spoiled bread and cry babies, whine babies, and all the ones who don't believe. Here comes coal and here's some gunk. Filled a stocking that smells like skunk." Sophie went down, where it came darker and darker. 所以你觉得 Sophie 有在那个坏孩子的名单上吗？她之前好像被她爸爸妈妈宠坏了。我们去看看。Finally, she reached the very bottom. There was this list. Sophie looked for her name, but it wasn't her name she saw on the list. It was my own little brat of a brother, she cried. "Chris is on the bad boy and girls list." Well, she thought, once she would gotten past the shock of it, they do kind of have a point. But then she pictured the two of them on Christmas morning. There would be lots of presents of her and nothing for her little brother. On his favorite day of the year, Chris would find only a stinky stocking filled with coal and gunk. "He will be so disappointed. He will be so sad," Sophie said. She quickly erased his name, but now there was a large telltale gap. 对，中间你把名字擦掉之后就会有一个空格，对不对？There was only one thing to do. Sophie took a deep breath and wrote down her own name instead. 你会吗？她居然把自己的名字写在坏孩子的名单上，为了要给弟弟圣诞礼物，她做出了牺牲哦。 The ink wasn't even dry on the page when some kind of really strong magic happened. Right before her eyes, the list, the BB&G elves, and the coal mines vanished. And Sophie was whirling around and around and around, hurling through the air in the blur of Christmas red and green. Was she up? Was she down? 她被卷入了什么东西呀？Sophie was standing on the stage in the grand ballroom. A clock struck midnight. Santa began to speak. She's always on time. She works harder than anyone I know, including me. Ho, ho, ho. In short, she does things right and I would be lost without her. Let's have a big round of applause for my sister. The curtain opened. Auntie Claus! Sophie shouted. Auntie Claus! Everyone cheered. Hooray for Auntie Claus! Turning to Sophie, Auntie Claus winked and said, Come along, darling. You must be home in time for Christmas. 所以原来她的阿姨是圣诞老公公的妹妹啊。Sophie was about to climb onto the sleigh when Mr. Pudding appeared. He was waving the green and red book in the air. Oh dear, he cried. Auntie Claus, Sophie can't leave until she knows the first and final rule. See, it's always said so right here under departing procedures.
为什么他一直说哦啊？
他是一个可爱的小矮人啊。The reindeer stumped restlessly.
哦的。
他的口头禅啊，每个人都有口头禅。The reindeer stumped restlessly and shook their heads as if to say, "Let's go, let's go."
口头禅是我小乖乖，还有我爱你。
对。
你有乖乖呀
Sophie knows the first and final rules, Mr. Pudding, Auntie Claus said. I do, said Sophie. Yes, you do. Now hop onto the sleigh, there's a good girl. 要回家了吗？ Sophie jumped onto the sleigh and it rose up into the sky. Goodbye, goodbye, she called. She would barely hear her aunt's voice over the wind and the snow.I knew you had it in you. Merry Christmas, darling. The sleigh picked up speed. Ho, ho, ho! Santa laughed as the stars whizzed by. Sophie closed her eyes. Her face stunk with the cold. When Sophie opened her eyes,She could hardly believe she was in her own bed again. She ran down the stairs toward the living room. Please, let him get his presents, she whispered to herself. Until the tree was her little brother. His cheeks were red, his eyes sparkled, his belly shook with laughter. Merry Christmas, Sophie, he bellowed. Merry Christmas, Chris.Sophie said with great relief. It was then that she realized Auntie Claus is right. I do know the first and final rule, she said to herself. It is far better to give than it is to receive. 所以吃比受更有福哦。他的意思就是要多多给予，对不对？不要只想着要得到。There is something here for you, her mother and father said proudly. They handed Sophie a tiny box with a card. Inside was a diamond key hanging from a red ribbon. It's from Auntie Claus, Sophie said. What is Auntie Claus anyway? Chris picked up. On a business trip, darling, Sophie said, and smiled mysteriously. Suddenly, a thought occurred to Chris. She's never here on Christmas, he said. What kind of business is she in, anyway? This is something for me to know and you to find out, Sophie said to her little butter bowl of a brother. And
butter
我也不知道，就是很可爱啊，对不对？ And someday he would, but that's another story. The end， 这就是Auntie Claus 的故事了。所以呢，施比受更有福哦。圣诞节不要只想着要获得东西，要想想要怎么给予，对不对？你要替圣诞老公公准备什么礼物？你想好了吗？
还没有。
还没有，那仔细想想吧。好，希望大家都学习怎么给予，然后不要只想得到，我们都学会去付出，这个世界会更美好。这就是 Auntie Claus 的故事了。The end。